click on my account and public and go live. And it looks like it's live. Here we are again. I have taken a little bit of time off and it's been absolutely wonderful, but I am back here with the beautiful Dr. Sharnael. How are you, beautiful?
I am so good. And I actually took a little time off too. So you're my first interview since I got back too. So we're just like vacation buddies, I guess.
Well, you look fabulous, and I was so excited that you wanted to come on again because I really do. I'm not kidding. So, when you go to a great movie, you think about it later. When you go on a great vacation, you think about it later. Well, every time I'm in your presence and I'm not like kissing your ass, I just really love the things that I learn. And they're just the tiniest, most profound things. And they stay with me, but they stay with me so much that like I'm sharing it with my clients, like it's that cool to me.
Awesome.
And so I do. I look very forward to having time with you. And so I was excited to talk about this subject today of Pharmakia. And so I figured you'd be the perfect person to chat with that about. You've got the doctor and you've got the minister, and I do think they're both relevant in this case.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I feel the same way about you. I always have such a fun time after just thinking about our time. And I laugh and it's just easy and you're just easy. Some interviews you're like, and you're stressed to get there. And then like with you, it's like an old friend. It's like we've known each other forever. It's just so fun and easy and us just having a great conversation.
Thank you. I have learned to roll around in compliments, so I appreciate that.
Yes,
Especially now, the older I get, the more I appreciate them.
I hear you. Definitely
Yeah.
hear you.
Yes.
Awesome.
And so let's start with like some base. Actually, you know what? There's one thing I want to ask before that has nothing to do with any of this, but I know that you are always learning. And so what something have you learned recently that's just like profound and amazing?
Oh my gosh.
Or even it could be something little. I don't even care.
Do you have like 10 minutes? I mean, this is a story
Yeah,
that
sure. Go for it.
the story. So, okay. And I think this will help people too. I know it will because everything is about like just us being signs for the whole collective. But since you asked, I will bring it up. So, before I left on my trip, I was with another doctor, Dr. Thomas Lucky, that I work with a lot and have for over a decade.
Love
And
the name.
yes, I know, right? And he does a lot of frequency. He's got crazy. He inspired me to get a lot of the modalities that I have, all the different machines of frequency and different things. And so when I was over there working on, remembering my own health, and he kept bringing up, as he was testing me, there was something in the field having to do with my grandfather on my mom's side, and specifically with his middle name. And I didn't remember his middle name. I know that I knew it was an interest. It was different than, the average American John or whatever. So I called my mom and asked her, what's grandpa's middle name? And basically she was like Ingwald, which is quite interesting. Now, the backstory is, he's Norwegian, and they came over at 16 from Norway. I've been to Norway to see all my people. I have lots of people over there still. And I was actually all week watching this Netflix series called Ragnarok about the backstory of Thor, not knowing that it was actually filmed 114 miles from where my family is. And so, like, looking at all these views that they kept showing, this amazing scenery in Norway, it was literally like I was crying like the whole time. And maybe watching it because it was just, I felt so connected just with, it was Norwegian clothes and decoration, and they all had the Scandinavian names, and it was dubbed in English, but also mythology, which I had not studied too much of, to be honest. I just, I watched Marvel, but that's about it. So, as far as Thor and what have you. But so anyway, kind of had the Norway thing in my field, I guess, probably just watching all that and just really connecting with my grandfather, but also because my grandson is why we were out of town, is because I had my first grandson last week. And he was actually, yeah, he was named after my grandfather Bennett. So he's Cody Bennett. That's his middle name. Your first name is who you are, and your second name is your call. So he was actually conceived on 9/21. My grandfather was born 9/21 in 1921. You know, we're in the year 21. Austin is also, the father is 21. My daughter's 21. There's just all these things about 9/21. I've been seeing 9/21 everywhere I go because I know my grandfather is in the field and he's just like really present about all of this. So fast forward, I'm with Dr. Lucky, and he says that this is showing up and that there's something specific with his middle name. And so I asked my grandma and my mom, you know, about where did Ingwald come from? And they explained that his mother's name is Inga. And I'm like, okay. So I look up Inga and I look up Ingwald. Inga, Carmen. Inga means God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Ingwald means God, and Wald means ruler. So God ruler is
Wow.
my grandfather's call.
Wow.
First name again is who you are. Second name is your middle name. So I'm like, oh, so he's, you know, Dr. Lucky is like just taking that in, acknowledging it, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there were some different things done to clear some stuff. And fast forward, I'm in Montana last week, which looks just like Norway. It makes total sense why half of Norway, when they came to the States, moved to Montana, because it's literally like carbon copy as far as scenery and beauty and all that. Maybe missing a few glaciers, but ish, you know. So this lady that I synchronicity is amazing, but she contacted me the day before I was going to Big Fork about my card deck, because she received my card deck in the mail, but also saw them at the Theta Healing Center. And I don't know how all this happened so fast, but she was like, hey, I'm in Montana. I heard that you are from Montana. You know, if there's any chance that you would want to connect, I would love to connect, and we can, you know, just, I'd love to meet you. And she's like an instructor at the Theta Healing Center. I didn't know what the Theta Healing Center was. I didn't know any of this. And I said, where are you located? And she told me, and that's the exact city that I was going to the next day. So I was
Whoa.
like, matter of fact, I'm flying there tomorrow. Like, I knew, like, I normally wouldn't just meet a stranger, but I'm like,
Right.
okay, yeah, that sounds a little bit like we might need to meet. So we meet. I connect with the owner of this health center, and this lady who does all these modalities, and I connect with all the instructors. They're doing an instructor training school at the healing center that day, so I get to meet people from literally all over the world. But
Give me chills.
I know. I mean, I'm just like, this is, if you're not bored, if you're bored in your life, you're doing it wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
this is
No kidding.
this
There's
is like
so
real
much
life.
to
This
learn.
is just normal, everyday miracle life. And if you've read my book of miracles, then you know. But so I go and I meet these people. They have crystals the size of my entire body, literally standing next to these amazing crystals. And I asked the lady, she's using her cards in the sessions, and so are several other people. So I'm like, hey, do you care if you do a session on me? I'd love to see how you're using it in the modalities. Okay, this is it. I'm almost finished.
No, but this is so crazy. They're using your cards in their teachings.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And lots of centers are using them. I mean, people are using them in massage, Reiki, light workers, you know, they're just using them in their homes to help with their family or whatever. But so I'm like, okay, so I meet with her later. I have crystals in my pocket. I'm like all excited. I go there, and we're sitting on a bench outside to do this session in front of a bigger than me piece of smoky quartz that's in front of, I mean, it's like galactic, right? So we basically do the session, and in the session she's muscle testing me, and she's like, I'm picking up something from your ancestors on your mom's side, something to do with your grandfather.
Wow.
Okay. And she's like, it's like there's this sort of like fight energy that I'm picking up that maybe not serving you in the highest for your field right now. And are you getting any kind of like patterns in your life that have to do with like fight or conflict? And I'm like, I have had a couple. Um, So she's like, yeah, it's definitely something with your ancestors. I'm not sure what this fight thing is. Well, my name is Sharna, El, which is Rose of God, and warrior of God, right? So I'm almost done, I promise. But she's like, yeah, there's something with your grandfather. And so she's like going through, and I explained to her how I just started watching this series and the whole thing that I just told you, and the whole thing with the name. Actually, I didn't say the name part. I just said, that there's a lot of stuff. And so she's like, I don't know, this is really weird, but I'm just gonna go for it. And if it's crazy, just let me know. Mind you, I did not tell her about the name yet. I thought I did, but please scratch that, because it wasn't done. This is how crazy it is. So she muscle tests, and she says, I want you to say this out loud. I want you to say, I must rule gods. And I was like, I must rule gods. And she's like, yeah. And so I say it. When she tests me, I am strong. And our perception creates our reality. So if I feel like I must rule gods, then that will be my reality, that I'm in this fight, And so she says, well, how does that make you feel? I mean, first I'm shocked
Yeah.
that this is like actually a belief in here. Right.
Right.
And she's like, well, we know that some beliefs are so subconscious,
Right.
they're in the cells and they're broadcasting in the field, and we're not even aware of what it's broadcasting. And so she says, what does this mean to you? And I said, well, for me, modern day gods would be Pharmakia, which is what we're talking about today.
Which I can't wait to get into. Yay.
Education, government, all these things that are gods. And she's like, well, was your grandfather a fighter? And I was like, no, not really. He kind of was just one of those guys that walked in and everybody liked him, and he just had this big presence, and he demanded honor, like not out of like manipulation
Yeah.
or control, but just like his presence.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, can we shift your DNA to basically have all the honor and have all, the shift that's required without the fight energy,
Yeah.
like your grandfather. And I
Yeah.
was like, heck yeah. So so she's like, well, let's shift that now. And so we start working towards that. And immediately when we're doing that, this raven is in a tree above us, cacaoing, like going off and off. And she's like kind of put off, and I think a little bit like, please stop the noise. But
Yeah.
I start bawling, crying, because ravens are all about the Norse, all about Norwegian, all about mythology, all about Thor, the seer's prophecy. I'm like, oh my God, this amazing raven is here to help me through this session to clear this thing. And I said to her, what, one of my decrees is I ignite the Christ in everyone I contact. And when I remember that, it works. It's really good.
I
But
was literally just thinking that. Like,
yeah,
I'm like, I want to emanate Christ with Dr. Sharnael, and I want everyone that's here to feel that feeling. And it's so crazy you just said that.
yeah. I mean, that's one of my main decrees is I ignite the Christ in everyone I contact before I even show up. Like I do that daily. And when I remember it, everything that comes back is a beautiful response, but when I forget,
Right.
I get something less than love, which isn't meeting the target. So we did a permanent shift in the cells, and I have this amazing raven working with me. And literally, when we're finished, I'm bawling, and a freaking deer shows up like 15 feet, walks in front of me with two baby deer. And I'm
Oh,
just like, oh my gosh, so
multiplying.
interesting. Yes. So yeah, I mean, that
That's
is a big story, and this is the first time I've shared that public. But yeah, Pharmakia, if we can get to a point where we just are, whether it's Pharmakia or any of these things, where truth just shows up and ignites truth, then there's no fight needed or required. It's just who we are and what we expect, and we get what we expect.
absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And it's interesting too because I had just been watching one of these whistleblower videos by Phil Schneider, who like 7 years ago was murdered after he came out with his story. But he was saying that there's pictures of Thor
Hmm.
in like these CIA pictures, and he actually showed him sitting in some meeting or whatever, and he's just this like, huge guy, and he's like he's never aged, and it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff we don't know.
Yes, different Thor. I think it might be, oh
The
God,
Valiant Thor?
Valiant Thor. Yes. But,
That's what it is.
but yes, 100%. I agree.
That's a different one than Rag,
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok. Yeah.
And apparently, this valiant Thor has many, many children on the earth. Like he has, there are a lot of people who claim that he's their father. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
have
I
amazing
was
skills.
like, whoa. And his story was crazy. Like, if anyone gets a chance to look up Phil Schneider, because that's a whole nother show.
They're
But
amazing. Yes.
it was really interesting to me to because I didn't know. I just thought pharmaceuticals was just a word, and I thought pharmacy was just a word, and pharma were just words. And actually, it comes back to biblically being sorcery.
Yep.
And it's so I was dying to dig in with you on your opinions of, you know how I'm always asking about the spectrum. At what point does it go from being like an herbal thing to a synthetic thing to, where it's sorcery and not, medicine the way that God even provided for in the Bible, as, the physicians would use. And so I was wanting to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, it says in scripture the leaves are of the trees are for the healing of the nations. And that is true. God has given us these amazing plants as medicine. And whether we're using actual leaves or the bark or the grass or distilling it in amazing bottles to use as oils that go right into the DNA, or we're just breathing it in, going outside, getting grounded. You could stand in bare feet in the sand or the ground, and your hormones will change in less than like 30 minutes. So, and your frequency changes as well. So that changes the brain chemistry, your whole serotonin levels, dopamine, all of that stuff changes. But yeah, Pharmakia, most pharmaceuticals have a little bit of some sort of plant type in there, but then there's the synthetic too. So because then then you can put a price on it. You can patent it. You
Yeah.
cannot patent, the grass or the trees. So they're not making any money on that. So for me, it's a money driven deal. It's not about actually just hoping for our whole restoration wholeness process, but more so of like how can we make money off of not only making you sick, but then getting you better, because they're doing all this stuff to the earth, to the trees, to the air to cause sickness in the first place, but then they cause pharmakia, create pharmakia. So we'll go invest in that. But then there's also side effects, which give you more opportunity to have more pharmakia. So it's just this endless cycle where they're making money no matter what way you do it, and in hopes to get even more money because of the side effects. So it's talk about witchcraft and
True.
yeah.
Good, I like it. That's so cute. But yeah, I was reading and it said in the ancient Greek, it is sorcery, witchcraft, and drug administration fostered by worshiping idols. And then I also looked in the Hindu, and it's the opposite of noble, a slave, not expected to do good things. And it's interesting because when you think about what does Satan do, he tries to imitate everything that God does, right? So it's as if he's and what's so you when you said that it would be the healing of all nations, it totally triggered that one in Revelations. For your merchants were great. Hold on, I pulled that too. Great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived.
Oh, wow.
Time,
Wow. Wow. Wow.
first
Okay,
time
where is that? I gotta
that's
write that down.
absolutely relevant. Here I pulled it up. It's Revelations 18:23.
Dang, I did not see that before. Wow. I mean, I
Yeah,
probably did, but I didn't connect
it's
it yet. So that's
totally new to me today. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is so insane. And when you think about 50% of all Americans are on prescription drugs. And don't get me wrong, I do understand that antibiotics were created from something that was kind of a natural occurring substance that grew on something, that they pulled off and said, okay, here's some penicillin, right? And same with ivermectin. I think it was created very naturally. And so I do believe that some of those are actually good. But then other ones, if you really look at what they're doing, they're masking and they're shape shifting. They're shifting to another problem, right? So I got rid of that problem, but I didn't get to the root. So
Yeah.
now I've got psoriasis, or now I have, inflammation, or now I have whatever. And yeah, when you said that about all the nations, I was like, that's crazy. It's exactly what it says here. So what we should be doing is the herbal and botanical, and we have switched to like true sorcery,
Yeah,
which
which is ironic because when I first
so
started this
accepted.
like 15 years ago, I started using essential oils as a minister, and people were saying, "Oh my God, she's gone off to witchcraft." And I was just like, "Oh my God, no, there's 1600 scriptures about essential oils in the Bible, including the Levites who were the ministers, so who needed the frequency more than anything in the service they did with orphans and money and the temple and like sacrifices." So
Oh,
yeah.
it gives me chills. Woo.
Yeah. So, and then later when I got into crystals, which is just again frequency, and crystals were used by the Levites as well. People were like, "Oh my gosh, she's gone off into the deep end, and she's really like, doing the witchcraft stuff." And I was just like, or I'm actually doing the Bible because crystals are in the Bible too. It's like people pick and choose what they want to believe, and the truth is still the truth.
Yes.
It doesn't matter about you know anything what people's beliefs are. The truth is still the truth. So these are all foundational things. Our grandparents did this way before Pharmakia wasn't introduced really until the 40s. But before that, we would do things like put onions in our socks for like phlegm and congestionary things, or drink lemon cider, or all this stuff that was just natural. And just kind of morphed into a certain family that kept on pushing Pharmakia, and there's that. So
Well, just in America, it's a $1.3 billion industry.
mhm.
And I'm sorry, trillion. That's 1,000 billion. That is a lot of money for 4.7 million people employed.
Wow.
Basically, at some point you have to go, this is so nuts. They literally said of all the nations.
Mhm.
And it has deceived us. And if 50% of all the people in America are on some sort of pharmaceutical drug, then what percentage of those are, the Christians that are making fun of you for being for being a witch or in witchcraft, and really they're the ones that are,
Witchcraft.
because think about this. If you were to look at what a traditional witch looks like, right, and today, it's probably some young girl that's, doing herbs or, whatever, and she's, calling herself that, and she's maybe helping people get better with this, that, or the other ailment, whatever it is. Having a boyfriend, making money, whatever. And we think, oh, that's so horrible. This young girl is doing such a horrible thing. However, you have grown humans in boardrooms conspiring to figure out not only what to put in the ingredients, which would be a recipe,
Mhm.
which include fetal cells
Mhm.
or poisons or I don't even know, parasites, fungi. I don't know what they use, and they're literally conspiring for the recipe. Then they're figuring out how to sell it, and then they're pushing it on people with actual witchcraft, which is the works of the flesh. They're using intimidation, they're using
Commercials.
manipulation. Yeah. So I was just like, I really think this is amazing. And so many people have those little vials all over their house. And if you're wanting to close down a portal of hell, that might be a good way to go. And I'm not saying I'm not against doctors, I'm not against nurses, I'm not against medicine. I'm against sorcery in the way that this is being done, in the true sense of sorcery.
Yes. And if you look at some of the grants that are out there for the big ones, the C word, I'm not going to mention because I don't want to keep, I want you to keep your channel or whatever, but they are given grants to these research projects for, tons and tons of money. And the stipulation is they will get this money monthly or yearly or what have you, as long as they do not find a cure. Once they find a cure, then the money stops. So with all the organizations out there that do these research projects, they're getting so much money monthly and they're employing all these people to do these research, but we've already found the answers a billion times since the 40s on how to get rid of every disease under the sun, whether it's through frequency or anything natural. But
Right.
if you come up with those ideas, you notice those people are missing in action. Tesla, right, Royal Rife, a lot of this reverse engineered stuff, all the NDs that have been literally offed, 86 for coming out with whatever different modalities are available already. And then they're just missing in action, just like free energy, and cars that don't need gas and whatever. So, it's pretty sad. There's no, I don't give to any of these organizations because I already know that they've already found answers many, many, many times. We have the answers. And if you ever post any of that stuff, certain people will censor you, and
Right.
because they just don't want anyone to know. It's sad. And in the meantime, everyone is getting, whether it's chemo, it's literally against the law in the United States of America to use anything other than chemo, radiation, or surgery for the C. It's against the law. So I've actually worked with patients. They've gotten better, go back to their normal doctor, and they're like, what's going on? And they can't tell them, because if they tell them, then the doctor could come back and get them or the person helping them get locked up for doing that modality. And it's happened.
Yeah. That sounds like sorcery too.
That's a little sorcery, which is
I
good
just remember I was 14 when my mom got the C word, as you say, and she immediately, went into whatever therapies they suggested because she grew up in an era where you don't question it, which is, one of the greatest gifts she gave me is I question everything now because of what I witnessed her go through for 10 years. But, the first thing that I remember as a young kid was watching, her hair fall out. And she's like, come here and help me pull this out. And I'm like, oh, Mom, you're going to scar me for life, girl. Trying to make her laugh, and then, watching over time these beautiful blue veins turn brown and thin like wires, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. How does this make her? I mean, and then I'm a young kid saying this makes no sense. Like, just common sense, this isn't working for me. And so that's why I have always questioned at least the healthcare system. I mean, all of this has changed. I'm questioning everything now, which is kind of fun, actually.
It
As
is.
my daughter says, stay suspicious and that Satan's on the loose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get the people who have had those chemo things and they're on, bags to go to the bathroom, and they're, just the side effects of the chemo situation is horrific. I actually was working with a lady with breast C, and they had found, a lump, which, by the way, a lot of the C is actually black mold or mold, but misdiagnosed, 86%, and that's treatable
I
without.
completely believe that.
Yep. And so we had worked with her. She had went back to her doctor. It was gone. I was actually overseas, and she tried to contact me because they were trying to pressure her into a double mastectomy, even though they couldn't find anything on anything. They were saying, well, just in case, because they had scheduled first talk to her about a mastectomy, just a single, and then they wanted to do a double. But so when she showed up and they tested her, they couldn't find anything. And she was calling me going, what do I do? Because they're pressuring me to do this double mastectomy thing. And she couldn't reach me because I was overseas. And when I came back, I found out that she went ahead and did the surgery. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a young lady who had never had children yet. She's too young, and before she had started her, you know, family. And so now she wouldn't be able to breastfeed, or, that definitely changes your hormones and all the other things, but they put the pressure on her. Just like yesterday, I was in a legislative meeting with several representatives from my state because they called me in about this stuff going on with the V and the Maxine. And they explained that the dentistry school here in our state, they were going to shut down any students from being able to continue their education unless they had gotten the Maxine. And they actually rented buses and attorneys and went to the school to these kids that are like in their early 20s and told them, you can't continue your education unless you do this. We have buses outside that will drive you to the clinic. And they basically loaded up these kids and brought them, and not everybody did it, but they loaded up these kids with with the attorneys and brought them to go get these things. And the ones who didn't had called the representatives that we were with that morning, and we're just explaining how pushy this was and how they just felt it wasn't right. And not all of them had the guts to stand up and not do it. But again, you want to talk about, again, witchcraft, manipulation, control, pushing to,
Intimidation, humiliation. Yep.
yeah, it's sad. It's really sad.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. And so when you think about healing, especially from like a biblical perspective, keeping in mind that God's probably created everything that we need, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
what advice do you start out with somebody who's really sick?
Well, detox, the biggest reason why we have dis-ease in the body is trauma's coming up and or there's some sort of interference. Interference can look like foods that we're eating or trauma that we have, or, maybe we need to detox if there's stuff going on, red dyes, MSG, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, stuff from paint and food and all the things. So, the key is to detox the body so your body can do what it was meant to do on its own without any interference. And then just making sure we're getting the right fuel in our body, meaning the good foods with nutrients that are, don't have any of that stuff in it. And so, replacing what we're doing emotionally, physically, mentally, and then what we're eating and drinking, a little bit of exercise and detoxing. But I mean, there's so many modalities that we can use to help with that, whether it's colonics, raindrop, um, biofeedback. We can identify like what's going on in the body, put in the right frequency to counter where maybe a low frequency is. We can identify what foods or vitamins or supplements or minerals are required. I mean, even with a lot of psychotic stuff, I one of my favorite classes and when I did my studies was orthomolecular studies. And because I worked in a psych unit for a while, and I saw when people had schizophrenia or whatever, that's what they would dock them as. But usually it's just a lack of a certain mineral or copper or something in their diet. And all you do is get that in your body, and maybe they won't hear voices or want to eat paint chips or their mattress or all these weird things that we were seeing. It was just something that they were missing. And so, a lot of times it's just replacing what's missing that we're not getting in our regular diet. And all of a sudden, they're thinking clearly and they're able to do just the normal.
I love that. Do you work with people via Zoom or do they have to be in your presence to work with you?
No, I do remote. We do remote biofeedback, which will scan the body,
Yeah.
and we could see what's going on, but it also will send the frequencies back so we can go through and kind of, see what's going on,
Mhm.
send the frequencies back. It usually lasts about 7 to 10 days of just like sending that back. And then I go over the reports with people too, so I can maybe give homework assignments because I can do so much, but if I can tell you what to do on a physical to
Yeah.
help anchor that in to keep the vibration so you're coming up and staying, that's the best.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because it really is mind, body, and soul. I, of course, not a doctor, not a healer, not claiming to be, but I will say that the people that I have done the most meditative work with, where we work on a regular basis doing meditation with the Bible verses,
Mm,
the word, I believe, heals them.
yes.
Because I've had people who had, neuropathies, or one person that was literally most of his life had migraines, and he was now down to like only one migraine a week, where he was at six or seven.
Wow.
um, Blood pressure changing, and they hadn't changed anything other than they've started meditating and getting into the Word. And so I would love to hear if you have any comments on that.
Well, it's belief. The word belief broke down is to be alive in. And whatever your belief system is your perception, which creates your reality. So if we remember, when we remember God in us, and we are in union with that, then that's what we will start to create, whether it's on a cellular level or all the way out. Everything is an inside job. And as we remember, meaning to remember, as in be in union with God, and means to do again. So it's like a recommitment to be in divine order with our mind, our body, our soul, that alignment is so important. And when we remember God and us, I used to think surrender was just like the worst word ever.
You
I'm
got that warrior in you.
I'm such a, I'm the warrior, right? And so for me, it's like surrender. That's like giving up. Like I'm not a quitter, but surrender to me recently has mean more like to remember God and the technology that's already here. And when we surrender to all of God and every cell that we are, then we have that times a trillion, because there's a trillion cells in our body that all are made in the image of God, who's amazing, who's love. So when we remember God in every cell, then that's what projects into the field. And that's how we get those God matches. It's because you only get what you are. So when we are God in action, we create this pattern life of magnetizing God situations to us everywhere we go. And again, that whole I ignite the Christ in everyone I contact. When we visualize or imagine ourselves, radiating God out into the field, and that is our intention wherever we go, you'd be so surprised to see the energetic shifts everywhere you walk. It's just like, the disciples, their field would
Yeah,
heal.
yeah.
They call it a shadow, right? But it was Peter who just walked around. It was Jesus who walked around. I mean, someone just literally touched Jesus, and he was like, who touched me? He knew that something had connected with this field. And we have the same gifts, within us, greater things than these, greater things than Jesus. Are you kidding me? Highest scalar waves on the whole entire planet ever. Yeah, greater things than Jesus that we get to reflect, to walk in, to create as co-creators. We are architects of this new earth. And if we all commit to the highest Christ in us, and we work together, then that shifts the entire world one way or another.
Yeah.
We are creating one way or another. We are either default creating some shitty, terrible things for ourselves, or we're creating something positive with intention and, deliberate action, deliberate creating. I'm a deliberate creator. I'm conscious creator. And when I remember to be a conscious creator, that is, sometimes we have our days, or I have my days, I don't want to speak for you, or just like, and you can kind of be like, why is this happening? It's like, oh, why am I happening? Why am I creating this?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so good. I love listening to Jordan Peterson, because same as you, there's stuff that I'm just like, wow, it's just so profound. Like I really do love it. And he was talking about the difference between logos and consciousness. And he says, I prefer logos because consciousness is just being there, whereas logos is an active exploration and using both the physical and your imagination, but then also communicating the results. And it doesn't necessarily mean just communicating the results, to others. I mean, a lot of times that means communicating to yourself or to God. And I thought that was really, really cool. But I do want to rewind and just say how profound it was that you talked about the be alive in and the remember. Um, that is so awesome. And it really is true. And this is the renewing of the mind that Christ was talking about. And this is where I get in this mode. To me, that's when I'm in that that rhythm and that beautiful harmony and that orchestrated will of God, opposed to that screeching like karma wheel, you know? And so it really is as simple as just remembering. It was beautiful.
It
Thank
is.
you for sharing that.
Be to the word believe, to be alive in. And when we are alive in God, who is love, I mean, come on. When we are alive in God, when we are alive in love, that's what projects out. And then we get a match every time.
Ooh, it makes me want to dance. It makes me want to dance. I'm trying to think of what else. There was something else I was going to ask you about. Oh, I know. The talking to plants. I heard a cutest story about a little girl who had a grandmother that had a garden, and her grandmother said, "This is your whatever it was, cabbage, carrot, whatever it was. And if you come out here and you talk to it and you love it and and absolutely when harvest time came, that little girl's cabbage was like the biggest one, you know, in the whole thing, and it was beautiful and it didn't have any rot on it and blah blah blah, and the grandmother picks it and brings it in and she goes to cut it and the little girl freaked out because the grandmother taught her about the idea of loving and serving something, but she didn't talk about the reciprocation. And so then she had to teach the little girl, well, it came to serve you, but first you served it. And I just thought that was so beautiful because I've always felt that was true about animals too, you know. For people who eat them, I know there's a lot of people that don't, but to do so lovingly. And I was curious if you have any things that you do as far as maybe praying over your food or speaking to the things that you like. I would love to know what you do as far as loving those things that are around you that you eat or drink or put into your body.
Yep, great question. Well, for number one, the natives really had that spirit connection with animals, and when even they would hunt, they would go and, really bless the animal for giving this life for us. And we can, if you've studied anything about plants, there's a guy named Clive Baxter, which you would just have a blast with. Go find some videos, and his books are out of print, but if you can find them, they are amazing. All the science behind it.
Yeah.
But what he did is he actually put plants on lie detectors, because he's the pioneer of the lie detector, and he put plants on lie detectors, and the plants, if they were like yelled at, then it would show stress, just like, if you were under stress on a lie detector, which,
Yeah.
a lie detector won't show if you're lying. It'll just show if your body responds in a stressful way, which could be an indicator that you're lying, usually. But you could just be stressed for being on a lie detector. I don't know, but I'm just saying. So he put these plants on lie detectors, and they would, if they were talked to beautifully, then they would have this great response. But if they were talked to, in a freaky, scary way, then also they would have, a scary response. And then they went a little bit further, where he would actually have them all in a room, 40 miles away, and he would leave in the morning in his car, and he would start talking to the plants long distance.
Mhm.
And he'd say, "Hey, I'm on my way. I can't wait to see you, blah, blah, blah." And he would mark the time, and they were all hooked up, right? And he would get there, and at the exact same time that he was talking to the plants, those
Yeah.
plants were already, feeling him, hearing him. They have a different network than we do. I mean, we have the same network where we have that quantum connection. But
Right.
trees are very, I think about the trees all around my house. And when I bought my land, I literally was like so sad to have to cut down a tree for the sake of, my house. And I would went and I laid in the grass for hours, and I mean weeks and months, and just said, "Oh, can you imagine what this tree has seen," and just thanking the tree. But, even with Clive Baxter, he like cut the cabbage or whatever, and the other ones connected would cry when the cabbage was cut or the other plant was cut, or they had where they connected it to like a boiling shrimp pot, and the other ones that were sitting, the shrimp and the other group of water were freaking out because they could hear the shrimp like being boiled and killed.
I think I've read a book by Gary Schwartz called the Energy Experiments, and he refers to this guy, I think, because did he ever do something where he said he was going to light them on fire?
Yes, he
And
actually was going to light a leaf.
yes,
They
yeah,
did they did like a match to the leaf, and then they stressed out. And what's interesting is they not only would stress, what they did this one test where they went lit it on fire. I don't remember who was lighting it on fire or cutting it.
hmm
But they told the person, because scientists, they do things over and over and over again, but they're not just gonna do it and say like, oh, that's research. They keep doing it to see if there's any changes or to see if there's actual science to it. And so they had hired this lady to come in to do that to the plant, and she would walk in a room and go do her thing, and the plant would respond. And then they did that a few times. Well, then they asked the lady to come in. I think it was scissors, or it might have been the match. They did both, but she walked in with her lighter or walked in with her
yeah,
scissors, and she didn't even do it yet. She was told,
yeah,
don't do it.
that's what he was talking about.
Yeah. And the plant like freaked out just with her presence walking in, because it was like, I remember you burned me last time, or you cut me last time. So they had a memory. So the FBI actually got a hold of this research and was like, you know what, if plants can do that, we could take plants and animals out of crime scenes, and we can put the lineup up in front. And what they did is the plant could actually identify the criminal behind they took one person in at a time with the plant, and the plant would respond to the rapist or the murderer or the killer based on it. Now, we don't have laws in place for a plant or an animal to sit on a stand and like identify someone. Meow, 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 meow.
So funny.
Yes. But this
His
is where,
he is guilty.
yeah, yeah. But I really think, this could be where we're going with science of this is actual science. And, there, be careful if your animals or whatever are in your room, you don't want to do a crime,
It's like Siri's listening.
Yes. Who's listening? The fly
That's
on the
awesome.
wall. Literally, they might take the fly on the wall, and that fly is recording. Of course, crystals will record too. Crystals are
Yes,
recorders. They're record keepers, and so
that's what
who
they made.
knows what they. That's how they made CDs and records, and that's how they do a lot of the technology in hospitals. Is they use crystals that record. So
Right.
these are recording right now as we speak. Everything's in here. So it's awesome
So
technology.
it's so cool. I love it. And so I don't know how much time you had, but I had one more question if you have time.
Yes, one more question.
Okay, cool. And so the last question was if Dr. Sharnael was creating the future of healthcare, and you had all the resources you need, what would it look like? What would your healing center look like? What would your, staff look like? What would it look like?
Oh gosh. Well, and I'm remembering something else, because you asked about like something about modalities or whatever, and what I would do. First of all, like being aware of the plants, animals, words, decrees, how all that affects the field. I'm super, super like very conscious of labels on like what I drink. You asked about praying over the food. Of course, pray over the food, but water and liquid responds to words. And so I'm very careful about that. I'm also careful about like labeling on clothes, words on clothes, hats, shoes, socks, like labels. I mean, one time I had tested for this certain supplement that I really needed, and there were several brands in front of me, and I couldn't do this one brand. And Dr. Lucky went through each of the ingredients to see what was going on. None of the ingredients were the problem, but it said made in Ecuador. Well, I had a trauma in Ecuador, and so it was Ecuador that was making my body refuse the supplement.
Don't want that one.
Yeah, so words are really important, like what we have in our body, different things. But it's so being conscious of your whole life, what you eat, what you drink, as far as a healing center or modalities, just anything to detox, colonics, raindrop, hyperbaric chamber, good oxygen, good food, rest, exercise and mobility, to work the lymphatic system, whether it's lymphatic massage or some sort of vibrational plate, lots of grounding, lots of nature. There's code in nature. just staff, people who love, people who love restoration and wholeness, people who understand creator and, the aspect of God, and, who are interested in healing and light and love, truth, just spending the day and the night in a place of love and restoration, and being kind to yourself. I think too, as us in ministry and people who are in a healing type industry, we can get, like, if we're not careful, we can get so caught up in helping so many other people that we just drain ourselves. And so being very conscious of that balance of making sure self-care is there for us too, and replenishing, like you took some time off, I took some time off, some of those things are really important, of just like, stepping away at times and making sure the phone is off, and maybe we won't do 12 interviews a week this week. And you know what I mean? Just pacing ourselves of knowing, like, okay, what's a good balance for me? And you might have a grace period. I've had times where I'm like, okay, I'm doing 12 interviews today and 12 tomorrow. And then I'll take like 2 days off or whatever, or 5 here or 5, I just have to know what my grace is. And I may have a season where I can see all those patients and do interviews like crazy. And then there's a time when it's just like, I can't. And, and it's not wrong or right. It just is. And I can do all things through Christ. And Christ even took time away. He was with all the crowds, and then he took time away to pray or to just be with himself, and to remember and reconnect and recalculate, and to get in that surrender alignment with God again, to just like, oh, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? And there's so much, revelation that comes out of rest. Ideas come out of that time. I don't know about you, but when I go to the beach or the mountains, it's like, on one hand, I'm like rested and, enjoying the time, but I'm also getting so many ideas because I'm actually slowing down enough to hear God and to get some new things. And so I'll find myself going, let me sneak and just do this one quick video before I forget or whatever, or writing down lots of notes. So when I get home, I can refresh and start with these new things. But did you find that a lot when you came back? Are you just like, I have so many things I want to do, and you're just so excited? Do you feel like that?
I think I live in that space.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that's one of my downfalls, actually. I think I get so excited about so many things that I don't focus in on anything. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I need the opposite. I think everybody has their different thing, but I reminded that what you just said triggered something that I think is so important, and that is not only to take the time, but to respect other people when they need the time,
That's good.
even though you may really want to spend time with them, or you may really benefit from it. To give other people the grace of being able to say no, and they still like you, they
Yes.
still love you, they still, they're not, their whole life isn't conditional upon, you being there, showing up. And I think that's really, really important. Same with time. I mean, time is so precious. To spend even a moment being mad that somebody's late, like, no, just go and talk to God. Do, enjoy your environment, be present. It goes back to that, be alive in.
Yes.
Let's end it there.
Yes. Yeah. I,
Thank
I
you so
find
much.
that I get really bitchy if I don't have my time alone, because it just gets, I can always tell when I pushed too much is when I could start getting angry or resentful about people who want something or need something. It's like, and I'm like, that's not the good, that's not, I know it's time to like take a break and move. I don't like break, cancel, clear, take a recess and just reboot and recalculate, and, reunion and stay. And
Remember, I love that. Thank you for teaching me today.
yes, and thank you. You're all
Yeah.
awesome. And I know we're doing something next week, and I'm going to have you back on my show.
Oh, yeah. And that reminds me, Jen Easton is going to join us this Saturday. So the three of us are going to conspire to help people out of the matrix.
Yeah, awesome. So we will talk then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. And thanks, Dr. Sharnael.
All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.